Hi, it's Maria from Still Dreaming Homestead. Happy to be with you as always. I'm going to continue reading in the book The Long Winter by Laura Ingalls Wilder. We're in chapter 19. Antelope. There came a sunny day when the loose snow was rolling like drifts of smoke across the frozen white prairie. Pa came hurrying into the house. "There's a herd of antelope west of town," he said, as he took his shotgun down from the hooks and filled his pockets with cartridges. Laura threw Ma's shawl around her and ran into the cold front room. She scratched a peephole through the frost of the window and saw a large crowd of men gathered in the street. Several were on horseback. Mr. Foster and Almanzo were riding the beautiful Morgan horses. Cap Garland came running and joined the men on foot who were listening to Pa. They all carried guns. They looked excited and their voices sounded excited and loud. "Come back where it's warm, Laura," Ma called. "Think of the venison," Laura said, hanging up the shawl. "I hope Pa gets 2 antelopes." "I'll be glad to have some meat to go with the brown bread," Ma said. Excuse me. "But we must not count our chickens before they're hatched." That means don't count on things before they are done, because sometimes you can get disappointed that way. "Why, Ma, Pa will get an antelope if there's any way to get antelopes," said Laura. Carrie brought a dish of wheat to the hopper of the coffee mill that Mary was grinding. "Roasted venison," said Carrie, "with gravy and gravy on potatoes and brown bread." "Wait a minute, Mary," Laura exclaimed. "Listen." There they go. The steady wind rushed by the house and whistled along the eaves, but they could barely hear the voices and the feet of the men and horses moving away along the main street. At the end of the street, they paused. They could see a mile away across the snowdrifts and the blowing snow the gray herd of antelope drifting southward. "Slow and easy does it," said Pa. "Give us time to work around them to the north before you fellows close in from the south. Come in slow and herd them towards us without scaring them if you can, till they're within gunshot. There's no hurry. We've got the day before us, and if we work it right, we ought to get 1 apiece. Maybe we'd better ride to the north, and you fellows on foot surround them from the south," Mr. Foster said. "No, let it go as Ingles said," Mr. Hawthorne told him. "Come on, boys." "String out," Pa said. "Go slow and easy. Don't scare 'em." On the Morgans, Almanzo and Mr. Foster took the lead. The cold wind made the horses eager to go. They pricked their ears forward and back and tossed their heads and jiggled their bits, and pretending to shy a little at their own shadows. They stretched their noses forward and pulling on the bits and prancing to go faster. "Hold her steady," Almanzo said to Mr. Foster. "Don't saw on the bits. She's tender-mouthed." Mr. Foster did not know how to ride. He was as nervous as Lady, and he was making her even more nervous. That was the name of the horse he was riding. He bounced in the saddle and did not hold the reins steady. Almanzo was sorry he had let him ride Lady. "Careful, Foster," Almanzo said. "That mare will jump right out from under you." "What's the matter with her?" "What's the matter with her?" Mr. Foster chattered in the cold wind. Oh, there they are." In the clear air, the antelopes seemed nearer than they were. Beyond the drifting herd, the men on foot were working westward. Almanzo saw Mr. Ingles at the head of the line. In a few more minutes, they would have the herd surrounded. He turned to speak to Mr. Foster, and he saw Lady's saddle empty. At that instant, a shot deafened him. It was so loud. and both horses jumped high and far. Almanzo reined Prince down, and the lady shrieked away. Foster was jumping up and down and waving his gun and yelling like crazy. Crazy with excitement, he had jumped off Lady, let go of the reins, and fired at the antelope when they were too far away to hit. Heads up and tails up, the antelope were skimming away as if the wind were blowing them above the snowdrifts. Brown Lady overtook the gray herd and reached its middle, running with them. This is the picture that they have. Don't shoot! Don't shoot! Almanzo yelled, though he knew that his yells were useless against the wind. The antelope were already passing through the line of men on foot, but no one fired at them for fear of hitting the mare. The glossy brown Morgan, head up and black mane and tail flying, went over the prairie swell in the midst of the gray low clouds of antelope and vanished. In a moment, the horse and the herd were passed over another white curve. Then, growing smaller, they appeared again, and again the prairie swallowed them. "Looks like you've lost her, Wilder," Mr. Hawthorne said. "Too bad." The other riders came up. They sat still on their horses, watching the distant prairie. The antelope herd, with Lady small and dark in it, appeared to be once more as a flying gray smudge that quickly vanished. Pa came and the other men on foot. Cap Garland said, "Tough luck, Wilder. Guess we might as well have risked a shot." "You're a mighty hunter before the Lord, Foster," Gerald Fuller said. "He's the only man that got a shot," said Cap Garland, "and what a shot." "I'm sorry. I must have let the mare go," Mr. Foster said. "I was so excited, I didn't think. I thought the horse would stand. I never saw antelope before." "Next time you take a shot at one, Foster, wait till you're within range," Gerald Fuller told him. Within range means that the bullet could get clear to them. No one else said anything. Almanzo sat in the saddle with Prince, while Prince fought the bit, trying to get free to follow his mate. Frightened as Lady was and racing with the herd, the danger was that she would run herself to death. Trying to catch her would do no good. Chasing the herd would only make it run faster. Judging by the landmarks, the antelope were 5 or 6 miles to the west when they turned northward. "They're making for Spirit Lake," Pa said. "They'll shelter there in the brush, and then they'll range back into the bluffs of the river. We'll not see them again." "What about Wilder's horse, Mr. Ingles?" Cap Garland asked. Pa looked at Almanzo and then looked again at the northwest. There was no cloud there, but the wind blew strongly and was bitter cold. "That's the only horse in this country that can race an antelope, unless it's her mate here, and you'd kill him trying to catch her," Pa said. "It's a day journey to Spirit Lake at best, and no one knows when another blizzard will hit. I wouldn't risk myself, not this winter." "I don't intend to," said Almanzo, "but I'll just circle around and come down into town from the north. Maybe I'll catch sight of the mare. If not, maybe she'll find her way back. So long. See you in town." He let Prince go into a canter and set off towards the north, while the others shouldered their guns and turned straight towards town. He rode with his head bowed against the wind, like this. But on each prairie swell or high snowbank, he looked over the land before him. There was nothing to be seen but gentle slopes of snow and snow spray blown from the tops by the cutting wind. The loss of Lady made him sick to his very heart, but he did not intend to risk his life for a horse. The match team was ruined without her. In a lifetime, he would not find another perfect match for Prince. He thought what a fool he had been to lend her to a stranger. Prince went on smoothly, head up into the wind, galloping along the slopes and cantering down them. Almanzo did not intend to go far from town, but the sky remained clear in the northwest, and there was always another slope ahead of him from which he might see farther north. Lady, he thought, might have grown tired and dropped behind the antelope herd. She might be wandering and lost and bewildered. She might be in sight from the top of the very next prairie swell. When he reached it, there was only white land beyond. Prince went smoothly down the slope, and another one rose before him. He looked back to the town, and there was no town. He was so far away, see, he couldn't see it. The huddle of false fronts, tall, and the thin smoke blowing from the snow pipes had vanished. Under the whole sky there was nothing but the white land. The snow was blowing, and the wind, and the cold. He was not afraid. He knew where the town was, and as long as the sun was in the sky or the moon and the stars, he could not be lost. But he had a feeling colder than the wind. He felt that he was the only life on the cold earth under that cold sky, he and his horse alone in this enormous coldness. Yep, Prince, he said, but the wind carried away his sound in the ceaseless rush of its blowing. Then he was afraid of being afraid. He thought to himself, there's nothing to be afraid of. He thought, I won't turn back now. I'll turn back at the top of that next slope. And he tightened the reins ever so little to hold the rhythm of Prince's gallop. From the top of that slope, he saw a low edge of the cloud on the northwestern skyline. Then suddenly the whole prairie seemed to be a trap that knew it had caught him. But he also saw Lady. Far away and small on the ridge of rolling snowfields, the brown horse stood looking eastward. Almanzo tore off his glove, put 2 fingers in his mouth, and whistled. He blew a piercing whistle that he used to call Lady across his father's pastures in Minnesota. That's when she was a colt. But this prairie wind caught the shrill note on his lips and carried it soundlessly away. It carried away the long, whickering call from Prince's scratchy throat. Lady stood still, looking away from them. Then she turned to look southward, and she saw them. The wind caught her, far, faint whinny. Her neck arched and her tail curved up, and she came galloping. Almanzo waited until she stopped near the rise and again called to her, and the call came down the wind. He turned and rode toward town. The low cloud fell below the skyline as he rode, but again and again a lady appeared behind him. In the stable behind the feed store, he put Prince in his stall and rubbed him down. He filled the manger and held the water pail for Prince to take a little drink. There was a rattling at the stable door, and he opened it to let in Lady. She was white with lather. That's like a sweat that's almost like a soapy bubbles. A foam of sweat dripped from her, and her sides were heaving. Almanzo shut the stable door against the cold while Lady went into her stall. Then with the curry comb, he scraped the foam from her panting sides and her flanks, it's like her sides of her legs, and covered her warmly with a blanket. He squeezed a wet cloth into her mouth to moisten her tongue. He rubbed her slender legs and dried them where the sweat still ran down. "Well, lady, you can outrun an antelope." "You made a fool of yourself, didn't you?" Almanzo talked to her while he worked. "It's the last time I let a fool ride you anyway. Now you rest warm and quiet. I'll water and feed you after a while." Pa had come quickly into the kitchen, and without a word, he laid his shotgun on the hook. No one said anything. There was no need to. Carrie sighed. There would be no venison, no gravy on the brown bread. Pa sat down by the stove and spread his hands to the warmth. After a little, he said, Foster lost his head from the excitement. He jumped off his horse and fired before he was anywhere near within gunshot. None of the rest of us had a chance. The whole herd hightailed it to the north. Ma put a stick of hay in the stove. "It would have been poor eating anyway this time of year," she said. Lord knew that the antelope had to paw away the deep snow to reach the dry grass that was their food. In a blizzard, they couldn't do that, and now the snow was so deep they must be starving. It was true their meat would have been thin and tough, but it would have been meat. They were so tired of nothing but potatoes and brown bread. The younger Wilder boy's horse got away too, Pa said, and he told them how it had run with the antelope. He made a story for Grace and Carrie of the beautiful horse running free and far with the wild herd. "And didn't it ever come back, Pa?" Grace asked him wide-eyed. I don't know," said Pa. "Almanzo Wilder rode off that way, and I don't know whether he's come back or not. While you're getting dinner ready, Carolyn, I'll step up to the feed store and find out." The feed store was bare and empty, but Royal looked from the back room and said heartily, "Hey, Gracie. Come on in, Ingles. You're just in time to sample the pancakes and bacon." "I didn't know it was your dinner time," Pa said. He looked at the platter of bacon, keeping hot on the stove hearth. 3 stacks of pancakes were tall on the plate, and Royal was frying more. There was molasses on the table, and the coffee pot was boiling. "We eat when we get hungry," said Royal. "That's the advantage of batching it. There's no womenfolk here to have regular meal times." "You boys are lucky to have brought in supplies," Pa said. "Well, I was bringing out a carload of feed anyway, and I thought I might as well bring the stuff along," Royal replied. "I wish I'd brought a couple of carloads. Now, I guess I could sell another carload before the train gets through." "I guess you could," Pa agreed. He looked around the snug room and ran his eyes along the walls hung with clothes and harnesses, and noticed the empty spaces on the end wall. "Your brother get back yet?" "He just came in from the stable," Royal answered. Then he said, "Jiminy crickets, look there." They saw a lady dripping with lather and empty saddles streaking past the window to the stable. While they were talking about the hunt and Mr. Foster's crazy shot, Almanzo came in. He dumped the saddles in the corner to be cleaned before he hung them up, and he warmed himself by the stove. Then he and Royal urged Pa to sit up at the table and eat with them. "Royal don't make as good of pancakes as I do," Almanzo said, "but nobody can beat this bacon. It's home cured, hickory smoked from the corn fattened young hogs raised on clover back on the farm in Minnesota. Sit right up, Ingles. Help yourself. There's plenty more down in the cellar in a teacup." So Pa did. And that's good, because the people were beginning to starve. and that includes pawn them. They weren't getting enough what we call calories, and it takes a certain amount of calories to be able to do things. When you're young, it takes calories just to grow, but it takes calories to move and run our bodies. You have to have enough of them. If you get too many calories, then you gain weight. That's not so healthy for you either. But too little's not healthy for you either. Well, it's Maria from Still Dreaming Homestead. I want to pray blessings on you and yours, in your house, out of your house, in the day and the night. Whatever you do, keep dreaming. All right, good night. Give my video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Bye-bye.